Kitty Hawk Town Council order this March 7, 2016 at Kitty Hawk Town Hall. It is now 6 p.m. If you would, join us for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for coming out. Thank those that will be looking later for paying attention to your local government. We always appreciate that. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. For the record, Irvin is not here. He's an excused absence. He's up in Boston, I believe, buying fish or looking at something that was fishy up that way anyway. All right, next we have recognitions and presentations, and we have a new police sergeant, Brandon Henderson.
With the vacancy of the Officer Watts retiring, I needed to fill a sergeant position. Put my feelers out there, and there's a couple people I have my eyes on, and thank God we were able to land Brandon Henderson, who formerly worked at a local agency. He comes here with 12 years experience, 4 years in the Coast Guard as a boatswain's mate right here in Organella. He grew up in the area of Greensboro, so he's a North Carolina native. And has 2 small boys. His wife works here in town, in Kitty Hawk. Glad to have him. I know he's going to do a great job for the town of Kitty Hawk.
And we're glad to have you too. It's not often we get to hit on another town, but by golly, welcome. It's a real pleasure. And the fact that you were an ex-coastie is close to the heart too. Thank you.
Welcome,
Thank you.
sir.
All right. Next, we have Mary Jane with the League of Women's Voters. You're up.
Good evening. I'm Mary Jane Slazinski. I'm co-president of the League of Women Voters of Dare County. I'm here to present you with the 2016 Citizens Guide. Complimentary copies of the guide, which has been published by the League since 1988, are distributed annually to government and business offices through the county. We would like to acknowledge the county commission, municipalities, and local businesses that contributed generously towards our publication expenses, and acknowledge the support of many employees who provided updated information. Our guide is published under the auspices of the State League of Women Voters Citizen Education Foundation. The guide provides names, addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses for national, state, county, and municipality officials. Additionally, the guide has information on government-funded recreation areas and services, local attractions, voting information, and emergency numbers. Over 6,000 copies of the guide are being distributed by League members from Duck to Hatteras Village, Roanoke Island, and the mainland Dare County. They are available at libraries, post offices, the Bauman Pheasant Centers, as well as town and county offices. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Publishing this guide is part of our continued commitment to provide pertinent information to our community's voters. Membership in the League of Women Voters is open to anyone of voting age, female or male. New members are always welcome. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it. These are getting more expensive every year, but we're happy to do it for the community.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will add that, in this day and age of internet, you'd think you could go there and find what you need with relation to those sort of things. And I have found that to be a whole lot easier to find what you're looking for, and a lot quicker too.
And a lot more accurate, because you would be surprised how many of those things are not updated on the internet. You would think click, click, click it'd be done, but it's not.
No, it's
But
not.
as of the day that went to the printer, those were the right numbers.
All right.
and
Thank you very
addresses.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Jenny Ash with the Outer Banks Sporting. Linda?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Thank you so much for allowing us to come tonight. And I'm Linda Wood, the Executive Director of Outer Banks Sporting Events, and Jenny Ash is our Race Director. We just want to talk to you just a little bit about Outer Banks Sporting Events and the economic impact that we had on our community in 2015. Well, we're organizing large events which bring thousands of people here from out of the area. 85% of our runners last year were from out of the area. We're also exercising healthy living lifestyle, giving people choices by supporting our local youth through Go Far, our hospital through the Couch to 5K event that's coming up in about 6 weeks. Is anybody participating in that from the town?
He's in Boston.
Your representative. That's fabulous. Or giving our local citizens the opportunity to choose healthy living lifestyle activities. The Dare Education Foundation supports our local students and teachers in schools through grants that they give to our students and providing affordable housing for our teachers and school employees at Run Hill, in Kill Devil Hills, and in Hatteras. The grants that they offer support different activities and enhanced activities within our school system that gives our students the opportunity to do things that they wouldn't normally have an opportunity to do. The Relief Foundation supports our local citizens that are in need, whether they're suffering from debilitating diseases or suffering from natural disasters. The twins that you see at the bottom on the right-hand side, their house burned down, but they were also in one of the Dare Education Foundation supported programs called AVID, which stands for Advancement Via Individual Determination, and they volunteered for us, and now they come back from college to help us in the summer and actually serve as our coordinators during Storm the Beach. So we developed some wonderful relationships with people that are, what should I do with this? Just go like that?
Yes. Do it again.
With people that both organizations have supported and that we have had the opportunity to work with in the past. We support our local school groups by giving them opportunities to volunteer, and we give them stipends for their help for us during the events. We have 2 expos, one in the spring and one in the fall, that give our local businesses the opportunity to get in front of the thousands of runners and their visitors that are here during that time of year to boost their economy. And during the events, they're all during the shoulder season. It helps our local restaurants, retail stores, accommodations. 20% of our runners last year were here to the Outer Banks for the first time ever. So we do bring runners and visitors here during the events. Our major event weekends are the Flying Pirate Half Marathon in April, Storm the Beach, which is our obstacle course race on the beach in June, the Saga Outer Banks Triathlon in September, and the Town Bank Outer Banks Marathon and the events in November. Now Jenny will talk to you quickly about the economic impact from 2015.
Thanks, Linda. Thanks for having us, everybody. Good to see everyone. So as you can tell, a lot of the money stays here in the community through the foundations we support. Linda, how do I roll it up? Roll it or?
Get it out.
Gotcha. Thanks. So separate from the foundations that receive our proceeds, we have some numbers that are pretty exponentially great to see for our economic impact for Dare County. So over our year of 2015, we asked the participants when they register what they intend to do in terms of staying and how long and guests they'll be bringing. So with that information we take and tally, we have 12,000 room nights booked over the year throughout our 4 events, and indicated that they bring 2.8 guests and stay for 2.8 days. Then we factor in some per diem money that people spend while they're here for getting around and visiting our restaurants and all that good stuff. So that, combined with the accommodations, the room nights, you can see that $8,300,000, or the $8.3 million total economic impact for 2015 really comes to be a collective fantastic amount. So it's nice to see the bottom line when we.
How do we go back?
There we go. So yeah, sorry about that. I skipped right over. You might want to hone in on Kitty Hawk. So those other numbers for all of Dare County for our 2015 totals. So when we look at just Kitty Hawk, in terms of who indicated that they'd be staying here, right here in Kitty Hawk, those number of participants and their guests and their visitors with their expenditures, it looks like their per diem and accommodations right here in Kitty Hawk are over $1.5 million. So for the year of 2015, it's nice to see the numbers that come from all of our events. And then in looking at, zooming back out for the big picture for Dare County, for 10 years, we just had our 10th anniversary of or 10th running, I should say, 10th anniversary coming up of our November marathon. So with those past 10 years of races in place, we have $55.8 million in local economic impact over the last 10 years. So that's nice to see. And then coming up for 2016, we always try to grow and change and enhance, of course, and keep things fresh. You know, there are always some challenges with competition in our region and things that are, you know, popping up. So we always like to listen to our participants and keep them coming to the Outer Banks because it is more of a destination spot. So we've got, as a part of our triathlon weekend in September that Linda mentioned, we're adding some cycling-only events that would be qualifiers for our senior games at the national level. So we'll do Saturday and Sunday bike race, and then a possible partnership with the aquarium after they open as a renovated facility, and maybe a family-friendly shorter race there, a road race in their area. So, and we do continue to keep, you know, expanding and looking at our competition and limitations and ways to improve. So that's always, you know, benefits everyone and keeps people coming to our area to keep those numbers growing regarding good experiences and economic impact. So we appreciate you hearing all we have to say, and we appreciate your support and everybody that pitches in to make it happen, and hope to see you at the races.
Well, we appreciate all that you bring to us. You do help the economy, there's no question about that. And the charities that you give to benefit directly in the community, and there's not many charities that we can say do that. And there's not many charities that are as accountable as your charity. So both of those are important, at least to my mind.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor, at this time, we would like to present to you and the town 2 signed prints from the Outer Banks Marathon done by a local artist, Peggy Saporito. So thank you very much for your support this past year and for the last 10 years. We appreciate everything you guys do for us.
Thank you.
All right, now we have Superintendent Dave Alberg from the Monitor National Marine Sanctuary.
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I wanted to come, I think I spoke to you last summer, late in the summer, and it was our first opportunity to give you a little bit of information about what our program does. But a few things have happened since the summer that I wanted to give you an opportunity to ask any questions, and I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to brief you on them. As I mentioned last summer, the Monitor Sanctuary for 40 years has been sort of quietly off the coast, doing work to preserve the history and the story of the USS Monitor. But we've done a lot of things, some of them I touched on last summer, in terms of supporting the community through partnerships with museums and aquaria. We've put together almost close to $3 million of support that's come back to Dare County between the graveyard of the Atlantic Museum, the Roanoke Island, the aquarium at Roanoke Island, a series of maritime heritage trails, and other activities, all in an effort to sort of bring the monitor out of the water and help share that history with the community. And up in Newport News, where we're at, we continue to work on the conservation of the shipwreck so that once those artifacts are done, many of them will come back to North Carolina. But over the last 8 years, as I mentioned last summer, we've been also conducting some research work on World War II and many of the shipwrecks that lie off the coast that were involved in World War II and the Battle of the Atlantic. And we have drawn the conclusion, as have many other historians, that this area is unique in the world and certainly unique in the United States in terms of its history relative to World War II. The number of shipwreck losses off of World War II, and especially looking at the first 6 months of 1942, there were almost over 1,600 men that were lost off the coast of Cape Hatteras and off this area. 1,100 of them merchant seamen who had gone into the war, unfortunately, which had the highest fatality rate of any of the armed services. You had a higher chance of being lost in the Merchant Marine than you did at Guadalcanal with the Marine Corps or with the Army Air Corps. And this area off the coast, off the coast of Kitty Hawk, in this area really represents the only World War II battlefield the United States has beyond Pearl Harbor. This is really where the war came home. So for the last 8 years, NOAA has been studying these shipwrecks, documenting them, and trying to ask the question, what can we do to help enhance this history in a way that is of benefit to the community and benefit to the memory of these men who were lost. And so on January 8th of this year, NOAA issued in the Federal Register a notice of intent to begin looking at boundary expansion of the Monitor National Marine Sanctuary. We're currently in a scoping period through March 18th, and we've just completed a series of 5 public meetings, one in Raleigh, one in Beaufort, one in Nags Head, one in Hatteras, and then one in Washington, D.C., to solicit public comment and comment from communities and partners about what, before we go back and begin to develop a proposal that is a NOAA recommendation, we wanted to hear from the community. So we've got about 2 weeks left in this public scoping period, and we've received about 100 comments so far, and there has been a lot of misinformation, a lot of concern about the impacts this may have to fishing. And I wanted to get before you and tell you that no one within NOAA and none of our advisory councils, nobody that's been working on this, has recommended anything that would have any impact to fishing. What the proposal on the table is, how can we look at this history and expand our education and outreach efforts, and the real concern is the removal of artifacts off these war graves. But we believe that can be done with no impact to fishing and no impact to the dive community, and in a way that is very positive benefit to communities like the town of Kitty Hawk and others along the coast. So we will accept public comment for municipalities and others beyond this March 18th deadline, but Mr. Mayor and members of the council, what I would like to suggest, if I could this evening, is that if there is a member of the council or a member of the city that would have the time to come and spend a day with us in Newport News, or have my team come back beyond just a 10-minute presentation and provide more information about this proposal so that you can make an informed decision about what the impact of this might be to the community, I would really welcome that, and make sure that we get a good line of communication with you.
I think probably the best way to handle that would make sure you leave, when you leave, with the clerk or the manager, a contact point, and I'll ask council to address that and decide if somebody has the time to actually go up and do that. One of the concerns that I'm sure you're hearing, I kind of heard you lead up to it, was an expansion that is kind of the creep that always occurs in federal government.
Yes.
And that is, it looks good up front, and then it gets beyond anything anybody imagined. And we certainly, in this area, this part of our country, we've seen a lot of people, developers, whatever, give to conservation groups, only to have those turn around and sell it for whatever reason. So I don't know about the rest of council. I'm going to ask them in just a minute how they feel about an expansion that we don't really know how it will be checked in the future. Education is great. I understand the history of it. As a child, I listened to my parents who lived here through that and talked about flaming ships offshore. I knew some of the Coast Guard, or lifesavers they were called then. I grew up with them and listened to their stories about going out to try to save merchant sailors. They were bobbing around and burning oil and things of that nature. It was not a pretty sight. And you're right, there were more people lost in that conflict because there was nobody to help them. They were just sitting ducks. And, you know, a tanker, an Amoco tanker full of gasoline, it don't take but one torpedo and it was all over. So I think we all understand the nature of the beast you're talking about. We also understand the concern about expansion of a government that just seems never to stop wanting more. Jeff, do we at this point as a council want to endorse an expansion, or we want to hold off on doing that?
I would want to hold off. I would like to hear more about it, and then I have the same concerns, especially, you know, in my line of work. I've seen.
All right.
I don't think we should move immediately. I think a lot more needs to be worked out before we can feel comfortable making a decision.
We need something in writing to say this is where you go and no further.
Yeah.
How about you?
Very interesting, very intriguing, but I think we need some more information.
All right.
And thank you. Actually, that's what I wanted more than any endorsement, because I certainly wouldn't come in front of you asking you to endorse something based on 8 minutes of my presentations over the last 6 months. But I think if we, and there's no time crunch, the way this will play out is that this scoping process, as I said, will end on the 18th of March. And then NOAA will go back armed with the information that we have heard during scoping. And believe me, we've heard loud and clear the concerns about creeping jurisdiction and the history with other federal agencies down here. We're very sensitive to that. I think one of the things that I'm most proud about working with the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries is that what we do starts at the grassroots before the bureaucracy gets in, which is the whole reason we have these public scoping meetings before we've even begun to develop our proposal. But we will go back over the course of the next year to year and a half, develop what we believe is a preferred alternative to the things that we've heard, develop a draft management plan, develop a draft environmental impact statement, and then start the public process all over again. So that when we do that in a year, year and a half, the public and individuals like you will have an ability to comment on a real honest-to-goodness proposal. What I would love, as you've indicated tonight, is that during that next 12 months to 18 months, that we have an opportunity to hear from you specifically ways that, things that would be of concern to the city, more importantly, to help identify some opportunities. So, and one of the alternatives within NOAA and the sanctuary program on this expansion always is do nothing. We may at the end of this come back and do nothing, but hearing ways that we continue to partner with you and to do good things is always helpful down the road, regardless of how this comes out. So having that line of communication open is terrific, and I thank you for that. And I'll make sure that we get contact information, whatever mechanism we can continue a dialogue. We'd appreciate that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Now we're into public comment. Lynn, has anybody signed up?
No, sir.
Does anyone wish to speak at this public comment? Let the record show no one came forward. Next is the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve?
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, opposed? All right, consent agenda is approved. We had nothing removed. Now we go into public hearings. And the first one is a conditional use permit. It's an application to allow a fitness center at 500 Sand Dune Drive, Unit E. Do you hear a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
As you mentioned, the applicant's requesting approval for a conditional use permit to locate a fitness center in the existing building on the subject property, 500 Sand Dune Drive. He's going to be in Unit E. Fitness centers are permitted in the BC2 district with a conditional use with certain conditions attached. For this particular application, the proposal would be a personal training facility. It would dedicate approximately 1,250 square feet to being a training area that would be used for strength training equipment, including machines, free weights, and open space. The applicant has stated that the training would frequently be done one-on-one. Occasionally, he would have up to 4 clients being trained at the same time. The business would see its peak usage in the morning before clients go to work. There would be some usage in the early afternoon as well. One thing I do want to note on the site plan that, this is from the original site plan when that development was built. For the parking in that area, it was developed as under retail requirements of 1 space per 350 square feet and 1 space per 2 employees. The fitness center, as it's dictated in our zoning ordinance for parking requirements, calls for 1 space per 150 square feet of gross floor area. That would bring the parking requirements for this one to be 9 parking spaces. And there's enough spaces in the entire development to cover that. But for this particular one as well, as it's going to be 1 trainer with at the maximum training 4 people at a time. I think the most parking spaces that would be being used at one time would be probably about 5 or 6 parking spaces, and typically would be less than that. So I don't anticipate that parking would be any kind of issue for this use. Let's see. The planning board reviewed this at its January 14th meeting, unanimously recommended approval for the conditional use permit. With that, I'll turn it over if there's any questions for me. The applicant, Mr. Burge, is here as well.
Anybody have a question for?
I don't.
If you have questions, this is when you have to ask them, not when we go out. All right. Has anyone signed up?
Yes.
Does anyone wish to speak at this? Seems like fitness centers, this is what, the second or third one?
It's
They're
the
kind of like
hot-
banks. At
Yeah.
one time, we had banks popping up on every corner. Now it's a fitness center on every corner. All right, let the record show, no one has come forward. Any more questions of Rob?
No, sir.
Do I hear a motion to go back into regular session?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, council, what do you want to do with this?
Mr. Mayor, I move to grant approval of the proposed conditional use permit to allow the establishment of personal training studio at 500 Sand Dune Drive. Town Council finds that the proposed use is consistent with the town's adopted county land use plan and find this to be in the best public interest.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it's done. All right, next is planning, Atlantic Dentistry. It would be nice to get this one done. How many times has it been before everybody? My goodness. All right, Rob, bring us up to date so the public understands what's going on.
All right. For this one, the applicant's requesting to amend a previously approved site plan. Most recently, approval was granted to demolish the southernmost building on the Atlantic Dentistry property and then rebuild it in the same footprint with an additional 458 square foot addition. The demolition of that southern building has already occurred. The most recent version that the planning board reviewed prior to this version of it here included site connections between Atlantic Dentistry and both the properties to the north and the south, Sweet Frogs and the Harbor Bay Shopping Center. There was going to be an access easement to be required between all 3 properties. I guess from what I understand, the language of the easement was never able to be agreed upon by all 3 parties. So that version never made it to the council, although it was reviewed by the planning board. This one, the agreement has been reached between the southern two properties, Sweet Frogs and Atlantic Dentistry. So they've moved forward just doing the interconnectivity between the two properties. You can see on the site plan there, as part of the proposal, it would be taking out the current curb cut that's on the 158 right here. There'd be a new access being cut onto Ascension Drive, allowing traffic to flow around the back and exit on Ascension Drive. There'd be a one-way drive aisle taking it to the rear of the property. And, various other site improvements. They'd be cutting out some concrete that's in between these two buildings. And I provided with town council the full 9 sheets of the site plan that they kind of illustrated each phase of the process. One item of concern that has been addressed now that came up was initially there's going to be a temporary drive, gravel drive that connected these. It was indicated that the town was going to want some kind of assurance that there's going to be paved and not just left as a gravel driveway if one party decided that they didn't want to move forward on it. To take care of that, the applicants have agreed that as part of the phase 1 site improvements that there would be paved asphalt from Ascension Drive to the rear. We can accomplish that with a condition of approval that the final CO on Dr. Hyder, the Atlantic Dentistry, would not be issued until that section is paved. I will point out that the zoning ordinance 42-516A does state that it's the intent of the chapter to keep driveways along 158 to a minimum due to traffic hazard involved in frequent entrances and exits from a major thoroughfare. So their willingness to remove that one curb cut that currently exists right here would move towards that goal of the zoning ordinance to reduce the ingress egress points on 158. That'll answer any questions. The applicants are all here to answer any questions you may have of them as well.
There is one thing I want for the public's information. We're actually taking 2 buildings and we're about to combine
Right.
and explain that to the public that the code allows that in kind of a, what do you call it, strip mall type configuration?
Right, it's worded in the BC1 district that there's 10-foot side yard setbacks or a 0-foot side yard setback if there's a common wall. The addition, you can see right here, would create that common wall. Initially, the owner for the Sweet Frogs is just going to be building this crosshatched area here that's going to create that common wall. Once they have a tenant lined up for their addition, they're going to fill it in with construction with the rear part of the building. But that one addition, the connector there, it satisfies that common wall requirement, meeting the setback requirements.
And this is a 2-stage process. The dentistry will do its building this year, and the Sweet Frog extension or difference will what, happen in the fall after the season?
Right, the initial part that creates that common wall is going to happen with part of the phase 1 as the Atlantic Dentistry part gets built. That way the setback requirements are met. And then I guess the timing for the rear part of that addition is towards the fall, as soon as a tenant's lined up for that one.
Right. And I never quite understood what the easement was all about. What was that about? I know, and it, apparently you're just going to have the driveway now on the north end right at the property line. Is that what's happening?
Right, and that's kind of how it is currently. The drive aisle here almost butts up right to the asphalt of the property to the north. The site plans don't show any changes to that section of it. The easement was going to be in place in order, will be in place between these two properties in order to make sure that, somewhere down the line, one of the property owners doesn't change their mind and decide, your customers can't use my access point anymore, cutting cutting these customers off from going out on Ascension. That way it's ensured that they'd be able to have that traffic flow.
Okay, so the easement had nothing to do with that north curve. It had to do with making sure both of those parking lots with both of those buildings were available to all who might use them.
As it is now, yeah. The original, when they had all three tied in, the easement would have included that one to make sure that the traffic could flow continuously through all three properties. But
Okay? Anyone else have a question?
This is the last time we'll see this, right?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Rob.
I have a question.
Rob, did you get a revised easement and party wall agreement? Because
I've not gotten a revised one yet. I know there was a couple of referenced indirect properties.
Correct.
I would think the way we've done site plan approvals in the past, it would be a condition that before building permits were issued, that we'd have the revised agreement in hand.
Do we need to,
there were some incorrect references in the agreement that was provided, and I asked Rob to advise them of that, but I have not seen one that's been corrected yet.
is that something, if we vote to approve this, that we need to?
As long as it's a requirement that that agreement be in place before any permits are issued.
Okay, you're satisfied with that?
Yes.
All right. Lynn, you have a question?
Okay, there was also in the planning board notes, something about if DOT was needed for the access onto Ascension. Isn't that a Kitty Hawk Street?
I believe Ascension is a town road, so that would be.
Do we need to grant access at that point?
I'll have to look back to see how, because I guess I haven't run into any developments yet where we've granted curb cuts onto the town roads, but I think it's something that's done, I believe it's something that's done administratively.
Okay, do we need to include that as a condition if we decide to move to approve?
I don't quite know why you would do that, because it's like the state, they have a right to access to a public road. I mean, the state has, if somebody put something, a curb cut, and it was the only one they had, then the state would grant them that curb cut.
Okay, but it's not the only one they have.
I'm sorry?
It's not the only one they have in this case.
I don't think it's necessary.
I'm just
No.
trying
I
to smooth the
don't-
way to make sure
No,
that
I
there's.
don't believe it's necessary
Okay.
for us to have to add that to the approval. Do
Okay.
you?
Now, if you approve the site plan, you're approving that curb
That's
cut.
exactly right.
Okay, just making
It's
sure.
already in writing. All right, anyone else? No?
Sir.
All right. Council, what do you want to do with this? Do you hear a motion to approve?
I move to grant approval of this site plan amendment for the Atlantic Dentistry at 3704 North Croatan Highway and Sweet Frogs at 3700 North Croatan Highway, with the conditions that the temporary access drive shown on the plan is paved as part of the Phase 1 site improvements. And Steve, how would you like me to?
Just that the easement and party wall agreement be in a form satisfactory to the town.
Yeah,
What he said.
with what the attorney, with the attorney's 2 cents worth.
She's got it.
I'll second that.
All right. All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Go build some dentistry stuff. Now, let's call for public hearing. We have two of those. The first one has to do with a bounce house. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to set a public hearing at the town council meeting on April 4th, 2016 to consider a conditional use permit application to allow a bounce house at 3809 North Croatan Highway.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next, we have a call for public hearing to modify zoning with regards to placement of mobile homes. And do I hear a motion on that?
Mr. Mayor, I move to set a public hearing at the town council meeting on April the 4th, 2016, to consider text amendments to revise the language regarding mobile home placement in Kitty Hawk.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now we're into new business. And the first item on the agenda is an amendment to the Town Code, Chapter 18, dealing with provisions and offenses, and this one has to do with noise control. Rob?
All right. Sometime, a couple of months back, the town was advised that our current noise ordinance is unconstitutional. Chief Johnson might be able to speak a little more to that, but by adding in some measurable noise levels, going with the decibel levels, it gives our ordinance some more teeth, makes it a little more enforceable, and resolves the constitutionality issue. The proposed ordinance, it uses A-weighted decibels, shown as dBA. The measurements have been adjusted to attempt to take into account the varying sensitivity of the human ear to different frequencies of sound. The main effect of the adjustment is that low and very high frequencies are given less weight than on a standard decibel scale. Many of the regulatory noise limits are specified in terms of the dBA, based on the belief that it's better correlated with the relative risk of noise-induced hearing loss. And in the report, you can see I kind of noted out what some of the common sounds that you'll hear on a day-to-day basis, what kind of decibel levels they carry, as well as provided a chart in the attachments showing a larger scale of the different noise levels. Going this route, we will need to get a noise, a decibel reader.
And they're around $400.
And Chief Johnson provided this spec sheet that was provided in the packet for the one who was looking after that. So that any questions for myself or Chief Johnson?
We really don't have a choice. We need this. You get a lot of noise complaints, I know that. Will this affect dog kind of noise, or is it just people and music and that sort of thing?
People and music in general.
Okay.
The dog barking, no, and that's more of a nuisance
Gotcha.
type issue, and that's also the county's dog ordinance can work with us on the dog barking too. But as y'all know, this will wrap everything up and treat everybody fair.
Right.
With the noise, so we don't have any more issues with the restaurants and the music and stuff, and this will be fair. And the instrument that I chose is also used by the adjoining town, so we're all, if ours doesn't happen to be working or have a problem, we can get there.
Okay, all right. Any questions?
And this is mainly going to be used, is our noise ordinance just usually after 10 o'clock? Not necessarily. Okay, so it can be 8 a.m. in the morning if somebody say that.
Correct.
Okay.
We've had that issue too.
So we're going to, so by doing this, it's just noise is going to be whenever it
And
occurs.
the officer on duty will have it in his car in a case, mainly the night shift people, if they have a call, they don't have to go back to the police department. It'll be with them, and then they can, we're not looking to issue citations and charge people with this. We just want everybody to comply. And mainly it's for the people that are complaining the most. We can show them, look, this is not exceeding the limits, therefore we cannot proceed. And it takes them out of the loop too.
And it could be during the day.
Yeah, that's what
Absolutely.
I was just making sure their ordinance didn't just, that this wasn't going to be just at night. I was,
Right.
because I realize that, some people can make some noise on vacation at various times.
Well, they're not necessarily just on vacation. And you go back to the village and household to household sometimes gets pretty noisy too. So this will give them all a level playing field.
It will.
And it's probably been due for a long time, so.
It has.
All right, do I hear a motion? Unless there's other comments?
No.
All right, do I hear a motion?
I move to adopt the proposed text amendment to Section 18-2 of the Kitty Hawk Town Code, amending the noise ordinance. Town council finds that the proposed text amendment is consistent with the town's adopted CAMA land use plan and finds this amendment to be in the public interest.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the next thing we have is amendment to Town Code, Chapter 18, and this one has to do with open-air camping. I kind of wondered when this one was going to happen, too, to be perfectly honest.
As you see, the memo that is attached, I presented to you all, we're starting to have an increase in our people sleeping out in the open air, which is, or camping, which is a homeless population. Just recently, we did encounter a gentleman right off Perry Road, just behind the fire department, in that tree line on a small ridge. Walmart area, Kitty Hawk Wood, we're having issues there. And currently, we don't have anything that can prohibit someone from going out on the beach and directing the tent, sleeping out there anytime they want. So the other municipalities, and I was looking into it, this gives us a little bit of an enforcement tools that, hey, you can't come out here, just camp anytime you want to. And this will also be used, we have certain people that sleep in their cars, that they live out of their cars, hey, move on, any questions?
I think this is also something you needed for a while, right?
Yes, sir.
Good plan.
Something we need for a while.
This doesn't stop some children who live in the house from having their friends over and having a sleep out in the tent, as long as they don't make noise.
No, ma'am. That's right. No family members, or anything of that nature is totally fine about that. And,
Okay.
We want to just have a little bit of something, people sleeping actually right on 158 in the wood line. We do encounter people sleeping there quite a bit.
They're kind of being run from the other towns. They're
Exactly.
migrating
Yeah,
this
because
way.
they already have a,
And, we're the last one without an ordinance, so
No,
it gives
the
them
current
something to work with. And, maybe it can put them into a place where they can get some help. It's a sad
Our first
thing.
alternative usually is when we encounter, we try, hey, you need some help, what do you need? We
Right.
try to offer them help, assistance, and get them places, and give them a ride, or so forth. Family members. We do not want to be arresting people for sleeping constantly. It's just something, another enforcement tool that they do give us a difficult time.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Do I hear a motion to approve this amendment to the Town Code, Chapter 18, miscellaneous provisions, offices, and offenses, by adding Section 1820, open-air camping? The proposed amendment will prohibit someone from sleeping, camping on the beach, public land, or in their vehicle at night.
I'll make such a motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right, do I hear a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We're just moving right along with this code thing, aren't we? Amendment to Town Code, Chapter 20, Motor Vehicles and Traffic. And this is allowing for civil penalty for parking violations as set by the town's adopted fee schedule. This is kind of a major change for the town. We went through this one time before. Please explain to the people that are watching why we're making the change and how this affects what we're trying to accomplish.
Mayor, as you know, in council, in the summer, it's difficult parking issues. It seems to be increasing, and also too with our Super Walmart. And the issues that we're having is if someone is illegally parked, we hate to put that, to tow the vehicle unless we have to, because we don't want to put the person that's out on the beach, they may have a family, they have to go out on the beach and find them. If not, we have to sit there, the officer will have to sit there and wait for them to return to issue a citation, which would be a state citation. You can't issue a car a state citation, you have to be to an individual. The word has kind of gotten out that Kitty Hawk doesn't have parking tickets, and it seems to be a little bit of an issue with some certain people. They feel like they can park because We try to do our best, but we don't want to put people out on the beach. They're parking in people's driveways, they're parking in people's yards, they're parking in no parking zones. The fire lane is a huge issue at Walmart now, so we have to sit there for 45 minutes or an hour and wait for this person to come out who's been shopping. Or in the handicap zones, they don't have a handicap placard hanging on their mirror. There's no way to determine if it's a handicap. And Walmart is one of my biggest complaints from the residents in Kitty Hawk, year-round. So this way, this allows us, this is what, it'll look similar to this. It's waterproof. You basically put it on the windshield. You're issuing the civil penalty on the vehicle. It's $25 if it's in certain no parking zones, handicap. I know I proposed 50. And we can put this on the vehicle and they can come to the police department within 15 days and pay it, or see me or the supervisor on duty and explain their situation. And I think this gives us better, it's a less expensive means. If we were to write them a parking ticket on state citation, it's $238. This is $25. And manpower issues, we have 2 officers working in the summertime. We can't sit there and wait for these people. And this is not something that we're trying to generate revenues. This is something that we're trying to hold people accountable. They get this on their windshield when they park in a fire zone, they won't do it again. But most people, it's a constant repeat. And it's antagonizing. And people take advantage of it, you know. So we just want to have another enforcement tool in our belt for the park violation.
Well, and this came to us one time before, and we were of the understanding that even if you issued the ticket, it would go to the schools, I guess. And I don't think we understood at the time that you had to sit there and wait for somebody and those sort of things. So we didn't know, and certainly while I was on council, we didn't know that there was this option that could place it to the vehicle, and you didn't have to wait. You could go ahead and make the ticket, and the money in that case does come to the town, but that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to control people that are parking in handicap spots and that sort of thing. And on that subject, my question to council is $50 for parking in a handicap enough? I kind of think it ought to be a little bit higher. What do you folks think?
What is the state?
Tell him what the state is.
Huh?
What,
State's around 400.
might want, I want to go there.
And I looked in, Southern Shores writes this, they don't have a parking ticket for handicap. They got the state. Kittle Hills is a state. Duck's 100, Nags Head's 50. So I kind of.
Yeah, well,
But, I mean,
I'm
that's-
asking you,
yeah,
do you think 50 is enough for handicap parking? The other one, $25, so.
The other question I have is, and I don't recall, but do some of the handicap parking signs have maximum violation?
It's a standard.
It's just a standard 250?
Yeah.
183 across the board.
So, all right.
I kind of like $100.
I wouldn't mind at all going with 100.
Yeah, whatever y'all want to set it, y'all set the fee, and that's fine. And then I can give you some feedback later.
That's a very serious
And,
violation.
It vary, and when they come see me, I can say, hey, this was the alternative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
And-
this is the alternative, so.
Now, in the case that it's someone who has the handicap placard, just forgot to put it out,
Bring it to me,
everything will be, it'll be a wash.
and yes, it'll be
But
a
in the
wash,
meantime,
but a lot of people will
Remember
use
it.
everybody's placards. And most cars, when you run the registration plate, it will show where that has a placard
Yeah, it
attached
does.
to the vehicle, then the officer will just move on. We're just trying to get people to comply for people that are.
'cause I've noticed a couple
handicapped.
times over Walmart, they're maxed out, and I thought they had an excessive number of handicap spots.
And when I put pressure on the officers to enforce it, they're spending hours there, you know.
Yeah, waiting for people.
Yeah, I don't
So
like
it's
that.
just, it's not conducive. I mean, and this gives us a lesser means financially and a quicker means to enforce it.
All right. Well, in order to be the bad guy here, I'm going to make this motion. Amendment to the town, move to approve the amendment to the town code, Chapter 20, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Sections 20, TAC 51, 20, TAC 52, 20, TAC 53, 20, TAC 54, 20, TAC 55, 20, TAC 56, 20, TAC 57, 20, TAC 58, and 20, TAC 59. And this amendment allows for a civil penalty for parking violations as set by the town's adopted fee schedule, which we'll do here next. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, opposed? Nobody. All right. Then the next thing now is we have to change the fee schedule to accommodate this. We never had this before, so this is the fee schedule amendment. Go ahead. You have anything to add?
Do not, whatever,
All right.
y'all said it, we can.
Then I'm going to make the amendment there too. So a motion to approve amendment to the town fee schedule, and the motor vehicles and traffic is adopted. It is recommended, well, to the civil penalty for a handicap parking violation of $100, and all other adopted violations be $25. That'll be the new fee schedule. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, Chief.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Clerk Morris and Mr. Michaels, the attorney, for helping me get through this. It was a lot of editing, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I bet you're right, but it's important editing.
Good job.
Thank
It's
you.
done. Thank you.
All right. Now, Town Manager, you're up.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Town Council. Just a couple things. We were successful in hiring a new finance officer for the town. I'll introduce her at our next meeting, our April meeting. I'll give a formal introduction of our hire. Also, the Public Works Department and the contractors have done their annual street resurfacing of West Balkan Road and West Wilkins and a section of Bird Street, so you'll see some new asphalt on the ground. That's funded with the Powell's bill money, so we continue to make improvements to our infrastructure, and that's kind of where I'll leave it this evening. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Attorney?
I'll give you an update. The best update I have on the easements is we are down to 20, needing 27 right now. And it may, my assistant who's keeping up with it is out of town, so that was the count as of Thursday afternoon.
Okay.
And hopefully some have come in the meantime, but I can't tell you that for sure.
Right. I was looking through the book that the town staff has made up. It looks to me like about half of what's still outstanding are empty lots. So it's looking better,
It's looking better.
but it's not there yet. All right. Town Council, Jeff?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the chief for getting all this straight. It has been much needed, the stuff that you brought forward, and I appreciate the staff and the attorney for bringing this forward to the council.
Lynn?
I have nothing specific other than, Andy, thank you for all your help, and Rob, thank you, and Chief, thank you also.
Good job, everyone.
All right, well, I have a couple of things. One of them I need from the council. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., the bids will be open over at Manio, and I certainly plan to attend. But I need council's consensus to determine the next step at that rebid opening. Now, if Duck, Kill Devil Hills, and the county accept the bid, shall I include Kitty Hawk?
I think we need to wait and see what the bids are.
All right?
I'm not comfortable saying yes if it comes in 10 million. I'm just not comfortable without knowing what the numbers are.
All right?
I feel the same way.
All right, so I'm gonna hold my tongue and bring back information to each of you, and in that case, I will probably have to call each of you.
That's fine.
Because I won't have time to do a public
That's
of
fine.
any
That's
sort.
fine.
That's fine.
All right?
That's great.
Okay. Well, that was the other instruction. That's what I was looking at. And one final thing, just so you know, I was informed tonight that Lynn Morris has been with the town for 29 years, as of what, Saturday?
Saturday.
Wow, that's a long time. And you've seen a lot of changes.
Yes, sir. And a lot of things stay the same.
Okay. With that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
And do I hear a second? All right, all in favor? Aye. And 30 more.